Jeffrey Epstein Island became infamous not because it was hidden from the world, but because it seemed to hide its true purpose in plain sight. From a distance, Little St. James looked like a private Caribbean paradise. Blue water, palm trees, luxury buildings. A place built for privacy, money, and exclusivity. But the strongest facts in the public record tell a darker story. Not the wildest internet rumors. Not the fantasy versions people repeat online. The real story is more disturbing because it is grounded in deeds, complaints, searches, settlements, and a pattern of extreme isolation. Public records show that Little St. James, once called Mingo Cay, was bought in April 1998 for $7.95 million through LSJ LLC. And what happened after that purchase matters just as much as the purchase itself. According to the strongest verified reporting, Little St. James was not left as a simple luxury property. It was transformed into a private compound. Aerial reporting described cleared native vegetation, rows of palm trees, large U.S. flags, a cream and turquoise mansion, staff quarters, a helipad, and a large square building. This was not just a rich man's island getaway. It was a carefully developed site with its own infrastructure, its own perimeter, and its own internal logic. And then there is one of the most important details that a lot of people miss. The pattern here is not just mystery, it is insulation. Former workers and locals described a tightly controlled environment. Guides nearing the shoreline were reportedly met by guards. Workers said they had signed long non-disclosure agreements. One former employee even described a ferry moving up to 200 workers a day from St. Thomas for construction. The strongest reading of those facts is not that the island was mysterious. It is that the island was unusually sealed off. Not just remote, controlled. Not just beautiful, managed. One of the most repeated mysteries online is the strange domed building. And this is exactly where people get sloppy. The building is real, but its sinister purpose is not proven by the strongest public record reviewed here. The clearest major source description is that workers called it a music room with acoustic walls and a grand piano. The dome itself was later blown off in 2017. That does not mean the building was harmless. It means people should be careful not to treat speculation as evidence. And that is part of what makes the island so haunting. Because the real story does not need fake details to be dark. Another dramatic element comes from the 2020 Virgin Islands civil complaint. But again, these points should be framed as allegations, not settled facts. According to that complaint, Great St. James, the adjacent island, was allegedly acquired in 2016 through a straw purchaser in order to make Little St. James even more isolated, stop outsiders from monitoring activity, and make escape harder. The same complaint also alleged that in July 2018, Epstein refused to let investigators go beyond the dock, calling it his front door. Those claims matter because they show what officials were prepared to argue in court. But they are still not the same thing as adjudicated findings. There is another layer to the story that almost nobody talks about. The islands were not just socially isolated. They were also sitting inside a sensitive regulatory and environmental setting. Official Virgin Islands records placed the St. James waters inside a marine reserve framework, and the islands drew repeated construction and environmental citations. The 2022 settlement even included $450,000 specifically for environmental remediation on Great St. James. Then came 2019. Epstein died on August 10, 2019. 2 days later, on August 12th, Little St. James was searched. That date matters because it sits at the center of so many of the island's myths. And this is where one of the most important lines has to be drawn. The public record does not support some of the wildest viral claims people still repeat. Later reviews of records found that seized photos and videos from Epstein homes did not implicate anyone else. And Reuters found no evidence for the viral rumor that children's bones were discovered on the island. That does not make the island innocent. It just marks the boundary between sourced fact and internet mythology. And honestly, that makes the real story even more unsettling, because when you strip away the fake details, what remains is still a private island, rebuilt into a sealed compound, tied to major allegations, searched after Epstein's death, and later folded into a massive civil settlement. That settlement is one of the hardest facts in the whole case. In 2022, the settlement required $105 million plus half of Little St. James's sale proceeds. Then, in 2023, Little St. James and Great St. James were sold to Stephen Deckhoff for $60 million. By that point, the islands were no longer just properties. They had become evidence-adjacent landmarks in one of the most notorious scandals of recent decades, and the timeline makes the transformation clear. The island was bought in 1998. Great St. James was acquired in 2016. Epstein died in 2019. The island was searched days later. The Virgin Islands filed a civil complaint in 2020. A settlement was announced in 2022. And the islands were sold in 2023. What this shows is that Little St. James did not become infamous in a single moment. It became infamous through years of insulation, secrecy, scrutiny, and legal fallout. So what is the darkest truth about Jeffrey Epstein Island? It is not that every rumor online is real. Some of them are not. It is that the strongest verifiable facts are already disturbing enough. A private island bought through an LLC. A full compound built out over time. Security at the shoreline. Non-disclosure agreements. Ferry-based labor. A neighboring island allegedly acquired to deepen isolation. A search after Epstein's death. A major settlement. A final sale after the scandal had already scarred the place forever. And that is exactly why the island still grips people now. Not because it is the perfect mystery, but because so much of the provable record is already chilling. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe, and turn on the bell for more content like this.